The ship landed with a heavy thud on the red dirt. Tay looked out the window and saw the Vrak's homeworld for the first time. Everything looked different from Earth. The sky was purple. The plants were black and silver. The air shimmered with heat. Tay was a diplomat from Earth. His job was to build friendship between humans and the Vrak's people. The Vraks were not like humans at all. They were big and strong. They had thick skin like armor. Their teeth were sharp. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. They looked like the predators from old Earth stories. The Vraks had invited humans to their planet. This was a good sign. It meant they wanted peace. But Tay knew he had to be careful. The Vraks respected strength. They did not understand weakness. A tall Vrak's warrior met Tay at the landing pad. His name was Gorn. He was the size of a small car. His muscles bulged under his thick skin. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder. "Human Tay," Gorn said. "Welcome to Vraxus Prime. I will take you to your quarters." Tay followed Gorn through the Vrak city. The buildings were made of black stone. Everything was built large and strong. Vrak's warriors walked through the streets. They all looked powerful and dangerous. Some of them stared at Tay. He felt very small. They walked for a long time. Finally, they reached a building on the edge of the city. Gorn pointed to a door. "These are your quarters," Gorn said. "You will stay here during your visit. Food will be brought to you. If you need anything, call for assistance." Tay entered his quarters. The room was simple but clean. There was a sleeping platform. There was a washing area. There was a large window that looked out over a field. Through the window, Tay could see a training ground. Young Vraks were practicing combat. They were smaller than the adults, but still much bigger than Tay. They moved fast. They hit hard. Their trainers shouted commands at them. These were the Vrak's cubs. They were learning to become warriors. Every Vraks learned to fight. It was their way of life. Tay unpacked his things. He set up his small meditation mat near the window. He placed his water bottle on a shelf. He hung his clothes in the storage space. Then he lay down on the sleeping platform. He was tired from the long journey through space. The next morning, Tay woke up early. He always did. It was his habit from years of training. Back on Earth, he practiced yoga every morning. It helped him stay calm. It kept his body flexible and strong. It cleared his mind. He looked out the window. The training ground was empty. The purple sky was getting lighter. Soon, the twin suns would rise. Tay decided to do his morning practice. He rolled out his meditation mat near the window. He took off his shoes. He stood tall and took a deep breath. Then, he began. Tay started with simple stretches. He reached his arms up high. He bent to touch his toes. He twisted his body from side to side. The movements felt good after sleeping in a strange bed. Then he moved into the poses. He did mountain pose, standing tall and strong. He did tree pose, balancing on one leg. He did downward dog, his hands and feet on the mat, his body making a triangle shape. What Tay did not know was that he was being watched. On the training ground, a group of Vrak's cubs had arrived early. They were the most dedicated students. They wanted to practice before the others came, but when they walked onto the field, they saw something strange through the window. A human, the small creature they had heard about. And he was moving in very odd ways. The cubs stopped and stared. There were 5 of them. The leader was named Kral. He was the biggest and strongest of his age group. Next to him stood Vex, his closest friend. Then there was Mira, the fastest runner. Beside her were Tor and Zila, 2 cubs who always trained together. "What is the human doing?" Vex whispered. "I do not know," Kral said. "But look at how he moves." They watched as Tay lifted one leg and placed his foot against his other leg. He balanced perfectly still. His arms were raised above his head. He looked like a tree standing in wind. "That is a warrior stance," Mira said. "He is training. But he moves so slowly, Tor said. Where is the power? The power is hidden, Kral said. My father told me that humans are clever. They do not show their true strength until they need it. Tay moved into a new pose. He bent forward and placed his hands on the ground. Then, he lifted one leg straight back. He balanced on one leg and two hands. His body was perfectly straight. The cubs made small sounds of surprise. He has great balance, Zila said. Look how still he is. And flexibility, Vex added. He bends in ways we cannot. Tay moved again. This time, he lowered himself down. His hands were flat on the mat. His body was straight like a board. He held this position without shaking. That requires much strength, Kral said. To hold the body like that. I have seen our trainers do similar exercises. The cubs watched for a long time. Tay moved through many poses. Some looked like animals. Some looked like shapes. All of them required balance, strength, and control. Finally, Tay finished. He sat on his mat with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes. He breathed slowly and deeply. After a few minutes, he stood up, rolled up his mat, and walked away from the window. The cubs looked at each other. This is a human warrior ritual, Kral said. It must be. Why else would he do this every morning? My trainer says that all great warriors have morning rituals, Mira said. They prepare their bodies and minds for battle. The human is small, Vex said. But if this is how humans train, maybe that is why they are dangerous. They build different kinds of strength. We should tell the trainer, Tor suggested. No, Kral said quickly. Not yet. I want to watch more. I want to understand this human warrior technique. Then we can decide what to do. The other cubs agreed. They made a pact to arrive early every morning. They would watch the human. They would learn his secrets. Over the next week, the cubs came early every day. They watched Tay do his morning practice. They saw him repeat the same movements. They began to recognize the poses. They whispered names for them: the tree stance, the triangle position, the downward attack pose. Tay had no idea he was being watched. He enjoyed his morning practice. It helped him feel normal in this strange place. It gave him peace before the difficult work of diplomacy began each day. But the cubs were learning. And soon, they would want to try the movements themselves. The human warrior ritual was too interesting to ignore. It called to something deep inside them, the desire to be stronger. The need to learn new ways of fighting. The stage was set for something unexpected. Something that would change both the cubs and the human. Something that would bridge two very different worlds in a way no one could have predicted. 2 weeks had passed since the cubs first saw Tay doing his morning practice. Every day, they watched him. Every day, they learned more. And every day, they became more curious. Kral could not stop thinking about the human warrior ritual. He saw it in his dreams. When he trained during the day, he compared his movements to what the human did. The human moved with such control, such perfect balance. There was no wasted energy. One morning, Kral arrived at the training ground very early, even earlier than usual. The other cubs were not there yet. The sky was still dark. Through the window, he could see Tay beginning his practice. Kral made a decision. He would try it himself. He stood in the middle of the training ground. He tried to remember the first pose the human always did. Standing tall, arms reaching up. Kral raised his arms above his head. It felt strange. Vrak's warriors did not usually reach up like this. They kept their arms ready for attack, but Kral held the pose. He breathed slowly, like he had seen the human do. Something felt different. His spine stretched. His shoulders opened. It was not comfortable, but it was interesting. He tried the next pose, bending forward to touch the ground. This was harder. Kral's body was not built for bending. His thick muscles made it difficult. He could only reach his knees, but he kept trying. What are you doing? Crawl jumped. He turned around quickly. The other cubs had arrived. They were all staring at him. I was just, Crawl started to say. He felt embarrassed. Warriors did not do strange human movements. But Mira smiled. You were trying the human ritual. I wanted to try it too. Me also, Vex said. I have been thinking about it. We all have, Zayla admitted. Tor nodded. The human does it every day. It must make him strong in some way. Kral felt relief. He was not alone. Then we should all try together. We can learn the movements. Maybe we can understand why humans do this. The cubs spread out on the training ground. They all faced the window where they could see Tay. When the human moved, they tried to copy him. It was harder than it looked. When Tay balanced on one leg, the cubs tried to do the same. But their heavy bodies made it difficult. Vex wobbled and fell. Tor could only hold the pose for a few seconds. Even Kral, the strongest, struggled to stay balanced. When Tay bent into the downward dog position, the cubs tried to match him. Their thick arms shook. Their legs trembled. The position hurt their shoulders and stretched their backs in ways they were not used to. This is a warrior training, Mira gasped. It is very hard. The human makes it look easy, Zila said. But it requires great strength. I elated. They continued trying. Some poses were impossible for them. Their bodies were not flexible like the human's body. But other poses they could do. And those poses made their muscles work in new ways. When Tay finished his practice and walked away from the window, the cubs were exhausted. They lay on the training ground, breathing hard. I feel strange, Vex said. My muscles hurt in new places. Mine too, Kral said. But it is a good hurt. Like after a hard training session. From that day on, the cubs had a new secret ritual. They arrived early every morning. They watched the human through the window. They tried to copy his movements. Each day, they got a little better. Each day, they could hold the poses a little longer. They did not tell anyone. This was their secret. Their special training that made them different from the other cubs. But secrets do not stay hidden forever. 3 weeks after the cubs started their secret practice, their trainer arrived early. His name was Tharn. He was old for a Vrax warrior. His skin had many scars. His eyes were sharp and missed nothing. Tharn walked onto the training ground expecting it to be empty. Instead, he saw his 5 best students doing something very strange. They were standing on one leg. Their other leg was bent. Their arms were raised above their heads. They were perfectly still, barely breathing. Tharn stopped and watched. This was not any fighting stance he knew. This was not any Vrax training method. Where had they learned this? After a moment, the cubs lowered their legs. Then they bent forward, placing their hands on the ground. They lifted one leg behind them. They balanced on one leg and 2 arms. Tharn's eyes widened. That position required incredible core strength. These cubs should not be able to do that yet. It took years of training to develop such control. What is the meaning of this? Tharn's voice boomed across the training ground. The cubs froze. They turned and saw their trainer standing there. His face showed anger and confusion. Trainer Tharn, Kral said. He lowered his leg and stood normally. The other cubs did the same. We were just, what were you doing? Tharn demanded. What is this strange training? Who taught you these movements? The cubs looked at each other. They had to tell the truth. No one taught us, Mira said quietly. We learned by watching. Watching who? Tharn asked. The human, Vex said. The diplomat, Tay. Tharn's expression changed. He looked toward the window of the human's quarters. The human? You have been watching the human? Every morning, Kral said. He does these movements every morning. We thought it was a warrior ritual, a human way of training for battle. So you copied him, Tharn said. It was not a question. Yes, trainer, all 5 cubs said together. Tharn walked closer to them. He studied their faces. Why would you copy human movements? Humans are weak. They are small. They are not warriors like us. But these movements are not weak, Kral said boldly. They are very difficult. They require balance and strength and control, things that warriors need. They make our muscles work in new ways, Mira added. They improve our balance, and they make us focus our minds, Zila said. When we do the poses, we cannot think about anything else. We must concentrate completely, Zila said. We're clean gone. Tharn was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his students. They were serious. They believed what they were saying. Show me, Tharn finally said. The cubs spread out again. They began to demonstrate the poses they had learned. Tharn watched carefully. He saw how they balanced. He saw how their muscles engaged. He saw the control they had developed. When they finished, Tharn stroked his chin. These are not fighting moves, he said. But they do build strength and balance. I can see that. Yes, trainer, Kral said. But you have made an assumption, Tharn continued. You think this is warrior training. You think the human is preparing for battle. But what if you are wrong? What if this is just something else? Something humans do that has nothing to do with fighting? The cubs looked confused. They had never considered this possibility. We should ask the human, Tharn decided. I want to know the truth about these movements. If they are truly a warrior technique, then perhaps we can learn from them. But if they are not... He paused. Then, we need to understand why a species as weak as humans wastes time on movements that do not prepare them for combat. Kral felt nervous. They were going to meet the human. They were going to ask him about his secret ritual. What if he was angry that they had been watching? What if he refused to explain? Come, Tharn said. We will go now. Before the other students arrive. The trainer led the 5 cubs toward the building where the humans stayed. As they walked, Kral's mind raced. The human seemed peaceful. He never carried weapons. He always smiled when he saw Vrak's warriors. But Kral had learned something from watching the humans' morning practice. Strength comes in many forms. The human might be small, but he was not weak. Not really. They reached the humans' quarters. Tharn knocked on the door with his heavy fist. The sound echoed through the building. After a moment, the door opened. The human stood there. He was wearing soft clothes. His hair was slightly messy. He looked surprised to see a trainer and 5 cubs at his door so early in the morning. Trainer Tharn, Tay said. He bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. And young students. Good morning. How can I help you? Tharn looked down at the small human. We need to talk to you about your morning activities. The cubs have been watching you. They have questions. And so do I. Tay stepped back and opened his door wider. Please, come in, he said. Tharn had to duck to fit through the doorway. The cubs followed him inside. They looked around the humans' quarters with curiosity. Everything was smaller than Vrak's furniture. There were strange objects they did not recognize. And near the window was the mat they had seen so many times. Would you like to sit? Tay asked, gesturing to the floor. He did not have chairs big enough for Vrak's. We will stand, Tharn said. This will not take long. I want to know about your morning activities. Tay looked confused. My morning activities? The movements you do. Kral spoke up. Every morning. Near the window. We have been watching. Understanding crossed Tay's face. Oh, you mean my yoga practice? Yoga. Tharn repeated the strange word. Is this a human warrior technique? Tay blinked in surprise. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. It was not a mean laugh. It was warm and friendly. But the cubs had never heard anyone laugh when a trainer asked them a serious question. Warrior technique? Tay smiled. No. Yoga is not for fighting. It is for peace. The cubs looked at each other. Peace? But the movements were so difficult. They required so much strength. I do not understand, Tharn said. His voice was hard. If it is not for fighting, why do you do it? Why do you waste energy on movements that do not prepare you for combat? Right. Tay's smile faded. He became serious. May I explain? It might take a few minutes. Tharn nodded. Tay walked to his mat and sat down. He crossed his legs and rested his hands on his knees. Yoga is an ancient practice from Earth. It is thousands of years old. Humans created it to connect the body, mind, and spirit. What does that mean? Vex asked. It means, Tay said, that we use physical poses to make our bodies strong and flexible. We use breathing to calm our minds. We use meditation to find peace inside ourselves. All three things work together. But why? Mira asked. Why would you want to be flexible? Warriors need to be strong and fast. Flexibility is a kind of strength, Tay explained. A flexible body does not break easily. It bends. It adapts. And the poses do make you strong. They build muscle. They improve balance. They teach control. Then it is warrior training, Kral said. Some warriors do use yoga, Tay admitted. But that is not its main purpose. Yoga is for everyone. Old people do it. Young people do it. Sick people do it to get better. Healthy people do it to stay healthy. It is not about fighting. It is about being well. Tharn crossed his arms. Humans are strange. On Vrax, we train to be strong so we can fight, so we can hunt, so we can survive. What good is flexibility if you do not use it in combat? Tay thought for a moment. Can I ask you something, Trainer Tharn? When you fight, do you only use your body? What do you mean? Tharn asked. Do you use your mind? Tay continued. Do you need to think clearly? Make quick decisions? Stay calm? Under pressure? Of course, Tharn said. A warrior who cannot think clearly is a dead warrior. Yoga helps with that too, Tay said. When I do yoga, I practice focusing my mind. I practice staying calm, even when my body is uncomfortable. I practice breathing slowly when I want to breathe fast. These skills help me in everything I do, including difficult situations. The cubs were listening carefully. This made sense. Their trainers always told them that the mind was as important as the body in combat. And there is something else, Tay added. Humans are not like Vrax. We are not natural predators. We are not born with armor and claws and strength. We are small. We are soft. We are weak. That is true. Tharn agreed. So we had to find other ways to survive, Tay said. We learned to make tools. We learned to work together. We learned to think and plan. And we learned to take care of our bodies in different ways. Yoga is one of those ways. It helps us stay healthy and balanced in a world that is often hard for creatures like us. Zayla spoke quietly. You do yoga because you are weak? Tay smiled again. I do yoga because I am human. And being human means accepting what I am and finding ways to be the best version of myself. Not the best Vrax. Not the best warrior. The best human. There was silence in the room. The cubs were thinking hard. They had misunderstood everything. They thought the human was doing warrior training. They thought he was preparing for battle, but he was just trying to stay healthy and calm. Tor looked disappointed. So it is not a secret fighting technique? I am sorry to disappoint you, Tay said kindly. But no, it is just exercise, and meditation, and breathing. Kral felt foolish. All this time, they had been copying human wellness exercises, not warrior training. What a waste. But then Tharn asked a question. These poses you do, they are difficult, yes? Some of them are very difficult, Tay agreed. I have been practicing for many years, And there are still poses I cannot do perfectly. And they require strength and balance. Yes, core strength especially. And mental discipline. Tharn stroked his chin again. He was thinking. Show us, he said suddenly. Show you? Tay asked. Do your yoga now. Let us see these poses more closely. Tay looked uncertain. Are you sure? It might seem boring to watch. Show us, Tharn commanded. Tay stood up. He rolled out his mat. The cubs and trainer gathered around him, watching carefully. Tay began his practice. He moved slowly through each pose. He explained what he was doing as he went. This is mountain pose, he said, standing tall. It looks simple, but you are engaging every muscle. You are rooting yourself to the ground while reaching toward the sky. He moved into the next pose. This is tree pose. You balance on one leg. You find a point to focus on. Your mind must be completely present, or you will fall. The cubs watched as the human balanced perfectly still. They had tried this pose. They knew how hard it was. Tay continued. He showed them downward dog, warrior pose, triangle pose, crow pose, where he balanced on just his hands. The cub's eyes grew wider with each new position. Even Tharn looked impressed. That requires significant strength, he said, when Tay held a plank position for 2 minutes without shaking. Finally, Tay finished. He sat down and bowed his head. Thank you for watching, he said. How long have you been doing this yoga? Tharn asked. Since I was a child. About 20 Earth years. And you do it every day? Every day, Tay confirmed. It is part of who I am. Tharn was quiet for a long moment. Then, he said something the cubs did not expect. I want to learn. Everyone stared at him. Trainer, Krell said, I want to learn these poses. Tharn repeated. Not for fighting, but for the other reasons the human described. Balance. Focus. Control. These are things warriors need. If yoga can improve these things, then it is worth learning. Tay looked surprised but pleased. I would be honored to teach you. And us too? Mira asked hopefully. Can we learn properly? Not just by watching? Tay smiled at the cubs. Of course. All of you are welcome. But I must warn you. Yoga is not easy. It requires patience. It requires practice. You will not see results immediately. You must commit to doing it regularly. We have been doing it every morning for weeks, Vex said. We can commit. Then we start tomorrow, Tharn decided. Before regular training begins, you will teach us this yoga. Thanks for watching. And another 11. They need to said. Then we start tomorrow. I will. Tay agreed. But please understand. I am not a master. I am just a practitioner. And yoga is different for everyone. Your bodies are not like human bodies. Some poses might be impossible for you. Others might be easier. We will have to adapt. Warriors adapt, Tharn said. As the trainer and cubs prepared to leave, Krall felt different than when he arrived. He had come thinking they would learn human battle secrets. Instead, he learned something else. He learned that strength comes in many forms. He learned that training does not always mean preparing for combat. Sometimes, it means preparing for life. Human Tay, Krall said before leaving. Why did you laugh earlier? When Trainer Tharn asked if yoga was warrior training, Tay smiled gently. Because I thought it was funny. You are some of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. Apex predators. Born fighters. And you were interested in a gentle practice created by small, weak humans who just wanted to find peace. It seemed ironic. But also beautiful. Krall thought about this. Maybe, he said slowly. The fiercest warriors are the ones who can choose peace. Tay's smile grew wider. Now you are beginning to understand yoga. The next morning, Tay arrived at the training ground early. The purple sky was just beginning to lighten. He carried his mat under his arm and a container of water. He was nervous. Teaching yoga to alien predators was not part of his usual diplomat duties. But he was also excited. This was a chance to share something important from his culture, a chance to build a real connection. The cubs were already waiting. All 5 of them stood in a line, looking eager. Behind them stood Trainer Tharn, his arms crossed, his expression serious. "Good morning," Tay said with a bow. "Good morning, human Tay," the cubs responded. Tharn nodded. "We are ready to begin." "Wonderful," Tay said. He unrolled his mat. "You will not need mats today. The ground is fine. Find a space where you can spread your arms without touching each other." The cubs and Tharn spread out. They looked awkward. Warriors did not usually stand in peaceful groups doing breathing exercises. "First," Tay said, "we will talk about breathing. In yoga, breathing is very important. It connects the body and mind. It keeps you calm." He showed them how to breathe deeply. In through the nose, filling the belly. Out through the mouth, emptying completely. The cubs tried. Their breathing was loud and harsh at first. They were not used to breathing slowly. "Good," Tay encouraged. "Keep practicing. Now we will begin with simple poses." He led them through mountain pose, standing tall, weight balanced, every muscle engaged but not tense. Then he taught them basic stretches, reaching up, bending side to side, rolling the shoulders. The cubs followed along. They were clumsy but determined. Tharn watched for a few minutes, then joined in. His old body creaked as he moved, but he did not complain. After warming up, Tay showed them tree pose. This is about balance and focus. Lift one leg. Place your foot against your other leg. Find a point to look at. Do not look away from that point. The cubs tried. They wobbled. They fell. They tried again. Slowly, they began to understand. Balance was not just physical. It was mental. When their minds wandered, they fell. When they focused, they stood firm. Even Tharn struggled with this pose. His heavy body swayed, but he kept trying. Tay noticed that the old warrior had great determination. They practiced for an hour. Tay showed them several basic poses. He corrected their form. He praised their effort. By the end, everyone was breathing hard and sweating. "That is enough for the first day," Tay said. "You did well." "It is harder than it looks," Vex admitted. "Most valuable things are," Tay replied. As the regular training time approached, other cubs began to arrive. They stared at Trainer Tharn and the 5 special students. Why were they standing in strange positions? What were they doing? One older cub, named Rax, laughed. "What is this? Dancing lessons?" Krawl's face grew hot with anger. But before he could respond, Tharn spoke. "This is yoga," Tharn said calmly. "A human practice. It builds strength, balance, and focus." "Yoga?" Rax repeated. He laughed again. "Trainer, why are you learning human tricks? Humans are weak, are they?" Tharn asked. Tay felt uncomfortable. He did not want to cause problems between the cubs. "Perhaps we should stop here," he suggested quietly, but Tharn shook his head. "No. I want to see something." He turned to Tay. "Human, you say yoga makes you strong, but you are small. How can we know that your way has value? How can we know you are not just weak?" Tay understood what was happening. This was a challenge. Not an angry challenge, but a test. Tharn wanted proof. The other cubs were gathering now. They wanted to see what the human could do. "What would you like me to do, Trainer Tharn?" Tay asked. "Show us your strength," Tharn said. "Not human strength compared to other humans. Show us what you can do compared to us, to warriors." Tay took a deep breath. This was delicate. He did not want to seem arrogant. But he also needed to prove that humans had value, that their different kind of strength mattered. Very well, Tay said. I will demonstrate some advanced yoga poses. You can judge for yourself. The cubs formed a circle around him. Even cubs from other training groups came to watch. Word was spreading. The human was going to show what he could do. Tay stood in the center. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Then, he began. First, he moved into crow pose. He bent down, placed his hands flat on the ground, and lifted his knees to rest on his elbows. Then he lifted both feet off the ground. His entire body balanced on just his hands. He held this position for 30 seconds. Some cubs gasped. Balancing on 2 hands required incredible arm strength and core control. Tay lowered down, then moved into a handstand. He kicked his legs up and balanced upside down. His arms were straight. His body was perfectly aligned. He held this for a full minute without wavering. Impossible, someone whispered. How does something so small have such strength? But Tay was not done. From the handstand, he slowly lowered his legs until they were parallel to the ground. His body formed an L shape. Every muscle in his core and arms was engaged. This was one of the hardest poses in yoga. Even Tharn's eyes widened. That should not be possible. The core strength required. Tay held the pose for 20 seconds, then carefully returned to a standing position. He was breathing hard now. But he smiled. Shall I continue? He asked. Yes, Tharn said immediately. Tay moved into a series of arm balances. He showed them flying crow, where he balanced on bent arms with his legs extended to the side. He showed them peacock pose, where he balanced on his forearms with his body parallel to the ground. For each pose, the crowd grew more silent, more respectful. Then Tay did something that made even the oldest warriors murmur in surprise. He moved into scorpion pose. He went into a forearm stand, then slowly bent his back until his feet came down toward his head. His body curved in a deep arch. His flexibility was impossible by Vrak's standards. When he finally came out of the pose and stood normally, the training ground was completely silent. Tharn stepped forward. I have seen warriors train their entire lives. I have seen feats of strength and skill that would amaze most beings. But I have never seen control like this. Balance like this. You are right, human. This is strength, just a different kind. Thank you, trainer, Tay said quietly. Rax, the cub who had laughed earlier, stepped forward. His head was lowered in respect. I apologize, human. I did not understand. I thought yoga was weak. But I was wrong. You did not know, Tay said kindly. Many people think humans are weak because we are small. But strength is not just about size. It is about control, discipline, practice. These things, any being can develop. Tharn turned to address all the cubs. Let this be a lesson. We Vraks are proud of our strength, our power, our fighting skills, and we should be. But we should not be so proud that we cannot learn from others. The human is small, but in his own way, he is mighty. Many cubs nodded. They looked at Tay with new eyes. Not as a weak alien, but as someone who had mastered his own kind of power. I have a proposal, Tharn announced. Any cub who wishes to learn yoga may join the morning sessions with human Tay. It will not replace regular combat training, but it will supplement it. It will make you better warriors by improving your balance, focus, and control. Several cubs immediately raised their hands. They wanted to learn. Kral felt proud. He and his friends had discovered this first. They had been brave enough to try something new, something different. Tay bowed to the crowd. I will teach anyone who wants to learn. But remember, yoga is not a competition. You do not compete with others. You only work to improve yourself. Each body is different. Each journey is personal. Understood, Tharn said. We will begin tomorrow with a larger group. As the crowd dispersed and regular training began, Mira approached Tay. "Human Tay," she said shyly. "Can you teach me that pose? The one where you balanced on your hands? Crow pose?" Tay smiled. "Of course. But it will take time. Your body is built differently than mine. We will need to find adaptations that work for you." "I can be patient," Mira said. "That is the first lesson of yoga," Tay replied. Patience. Later that day, Tay returned to his quarters. He was exhausted but happy. What had started as his private morning ritual had become something bigger. A bridge between two species, a way to share his culture and learn about theirs. He looked out the window at the training ground. Cubs were practicing combat moves. But every so often, he saw one of them try a yoga pose, attempting to balance, working on their flexibility. Change was happening. Slowly, one pose at a time, and Tay realized something important. Diplomacy was not just about speeches and treaties. Sometimes it was about showing who you were, sharing what you valued, being willing to be vulnerable and strong at the same time. He had been afraid that the Vraks would never respect humans, that they would always see them as weak and small and useless. But today, he had shown them a different kind of strength, and they had recognized it. That was worth more than any treaty. 3 months had passed since that demonstration on the training ground. The purple sky of Vraxis Prime had become familiar to Tay. So had his new routine. Every morning, before the twin suns rose, he came to the training ground. And every morning, he was greeted by a growing number of cubs. What had started with 5 had grown to 20, then 40. Now over 60 young Vraks gathered each morning to practice yoga with the human diplomat. They filled the training ground, these fierce predator children. They stood in rows, trying to balance on one leg. They bent and stretched and breathed. They fell and tried again. They were clumsy, but they were dedicated. Tay walked among them, correcting poses. Kral, keep your core tight. Vex, focus on a single point. Mira, breathe deeper. The original 5 cubs had become his assistants. They knew the poses well now. They helped the newer students. They demonstrated and encouraged. Even trainer Tharn practiced every morning. The old warrior had discovered that yoga helped his aching joints. It made him more flexible. He moved better during combat training now. The other trainers had noticed. "Racker, with Harden, again," Tay called out. The cubs moved into downward dog. 60 young predators formed triangles with their bodies. Some held the pose perfectly. Others struggled. But all of them tried. Watching them, Tay felt something warm in his chest. Pride, joy, connection. But not everyone was happy about the changes. On this particular morning, a transport ship landed near the training grounds. From it emerged Vrax elders, important leaders. They had come to inspect the training facility and see what their young warriors were learning. The leader of the group was High Commander Vorn. He was massive even by Vrax standards. His armor gleamed with metals. His face was scarred from countless battles. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never been defeated. He watched the morning yoga session with dark, suspicious eyes. When the session ended, Vorn approached Tharn. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Why are our young warriors doing human exercises?" Tharn stood straight. "High Commander, the cubs are learning yoga. It is a supplementary practice that improves their balance, focus, and core strength." "Yoga," Vorn said the word like it was poison. "I have heard of this. A human weakness practice. Why are you teaching our warriors to be soft?" "It is not soft, High Commander," Tharn said calmly. "The practice is quite difficult. It requires significant strength and discipline." "Discipline," Vorn laughed harshly. "Discipline comes from combat training, from pushing through pain, from learning to fight and hunt and survive, not from standing on one leg like a tree." Several cubs who were nearby heard this. Kral felt anger rise in his chest. The High Commander did not understand. He had not tried yoga. He did not know how hard it was. Tay approached respectfully. High Commander Vorn, I am Tay, the human diplomat. Perhaps I can explain. I do not need explanations from a human, Vorn interrupted. I need to see results. If this yoga is truly valuable for warriors, prove it. Prove it how? Tay asked. Vorn turned to address the gathered cubs. Which of you has been doing this yoga the longest? Kral, Vex, Mira, Tor, and Zayla stepped forward. We have, High Commander, Kral said. Good, Vorn said. You 5 will compete against 5 cubs who have not done yoga. Standard warrior trials. Combat. Strength tests. Agility courses. We will see if yoga makes you better warriors, or if it has made you weak. The 5 friends looked at each other. This was not a fair test. Yoga was not meant to make them better fighters. It was meant to improve their overall wellness. But they could not refuse a High Commander. When? Mira asked. Now, Vorn said. We will begin immediately. The training ground became a competition arena. Vorn selected 5 cubs who had not participated in yoga. They were good fighters, strong, and fast. The first test was a strength challenge. Both groups had to hold heavy weights above their heads for as long as possible. The non-yoga cubs started strong. They lifted the weights easily. Their thick muscles bulged. The yoga cubs lifted their weights too. They were not as obviously strong, but they had something else. Core stability. They engaged their whole bodies, not just their arms. They breathed steadily, managing their energy. When the non-yoga cubs began to shake and lower their weights, the yoga cubs still held firm. Kral remembered the plank poses he had practiced. The arm balances. His core was like iron now. In the end, the yoga cubs held the weights for 3 minutes longer. Vorn's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Next test. Combat. This was what everyone expected the non-yoga cubs to win. Fighting was what Vraks were born for. The groups paired off. Kral faced his opponent, a large cub named Grix. Grix was known for his aggressive fighting style. He attacked hard and fast. The match began. Grix charged forward with a roar, but Kral did not meet force with force. Instead, he moved like water. He sidestepped. He bent. He flowed around Grix's attacks. Yoga had taught him balance. It had taught him to be aware of his body in space. It had taught him to stay calm, even when challenged. Grix grew frustrated. He could not land a solid hit. Kral was too mobile, too balanced. Finally, Grix overextended. Kral used his opponent's momentum against him and swept his legs. Grix crashed to the ground. Around the training ground, similar scenes played out. Vex used her improved flexibility to avoid strikes. Mira's enhanced focus helped her anticipate moves. Tor and Zayla worked together with better coordination than before. The Yoga Cubs won 4 out of 5 combat matches. The final test was an agility course. The Cubs had to run, jump, climb, and balance across obstacles. This was where yoga truly shone. The Cubs who practiced had better body control. They moved efficiently. They did not waste energy. When they had to balance on narrow beams, they were steady. When they had to make tight turns, they adjusted smoothly. They completed the course faster and with fewer mistakes. When all the tests were done, the results were clear. The Yoga Cubs had performed better. Vorn stood silent for a long moment. His face was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. I do not understand this. These Cubs do not look stronger. They have not trained more in combat. Yet they perform better. Explain this. Human. Tay stepped forward. High Commander, may I ask you a question? Speak. What makes a great warrior? Tay asked. Is it only physical strength? Or is it also balance, focus, body control, breathing under stress, and the ability to adapt? All of those things. Vorn admitted. Yoga develops all of those things, Tay explained. It does not replace combat training. It supplements it. Think of it like sharpening a blade. The blade is still a blade, but a sharp blade cuts better than a dull one. Yoga sharpens the warrior. Vorn looked at the 5 cubs. They stood proud, but respectful. They had proven themselves. Trainer Tharn, Vorn said, what is your professional opinion? As someone who has trained warriors for decades, Tharn spoke carefully. High Commander, I was skeptical at first. I thought as you did, that this was a human weakness practice, but I have seen the results. Cubs who practice yoga have better balance, better focus, better core strength. They get injured less because they are more flexible, and they recover faster because they know how to breathe and relax. I believe yoga has value for our warriors. Vorn was quiet again. The gathered crowd waited. Then the High Commander did something unexpected. He turned to Tay. Teach me. Tay. Everyone stared. High Commander? Tay said, uncertain. If these cubs can do it, so can I, Vorn declared. Show me this yoga. I will judge for myself. Tay's heart raced. This was a huge moment. If the High Commander accepted yoga, it would spread throughout all Vrak's warrior training. Of course, High Commander, Tay said. Please, stand here. What followed was one of the most interesting teaching sessions of Tay's life. The massive, battle-hardened High Commander tried to balance on one leg. He wobbled. He fell. He growled in frustration. But he kept trying. The cubs watched in amazement. They had never seen the High Commander struggle with anything. After 30 minutes, Vorn was sweating and breathing hard. But there was respect in his eyes when he looked at Tay. This is not easy, Vorn admitted. I have fought in hundreds of battles. I have led armies. But this is a different kind of challenge. Yes, Tay agreed. It challenges you in new ways. Ways that combat training does not. Vorn nodded slowly. I understand now. This is not about being soft. It is about being complete. A warrior must be strong in all ways, not just in fighting. He turned to address everyone on the training ground. From this day forward, yoga will be an official part of morning training for all cubs. It is not optional. It is not a game. It is training. Any trainer who does not understand this will answer to me. A cheer went up from the cubs who had been practicing. Finally, their morning ritual was recognized and valued. Tay felt overwhelmed with emotion. What had started as his private practice had become a bridge between two species, a new tradition for an ancient warrior culture. In the weeks that followed, yoga spread throughout Vrax's prime. Not just to cubs, but to adult warriors, to trainers, even to elders who thought their bodies were too old to learn new things. Tay taught as many classes as he could. He also trained Vrax instructors to teach yoga themselves. The practice was adapted for Vrax bodies. Some poses were modified, new poses were created. It became something unique. Part human, part Vrax. A true collaboration. Kral and his 4 friends became the first official Vrax yoga instructors. They taught younger cubs. They demonstrated at ceremonies. They became ambassadors of the practice they had discovered by accident. 6 months after Tay first arrived on Vrax's prime, he stood on the training ground and watched hundreds of young Vrax begin their day with yoga. The sight made him smile. Mira approached him. She had grown taller and stronger. Her yoga practice had become advanced. She could do poses that most humans could not. Human Tay, she said. I have been thinking. We call the poses by human names. Mountain, tree, warrior. But we are not humans. Should we have our own names? Tay considered this. That is a wonderful idea. Yoga should be yours too now. What would you call the poses? Mira thought for a moment. The one where we stand on one leg and balance. We could call it hunter watching. Because that is how hunters stand when they watch for prey. I love it. Tay said. Soon, all the cubs were creating Vrax names for the poses. The practice was becoming truly theirs. It was no longer just a human thing. It was a shared thing. A bridge between cultures. When it was time for Tay to leave Vrax's prime, hundreds of Vrax came to say goodbye. The cubs he had taught. The trainers he had worked with. Even High Commander Vorn. You have given us a gift, human Tay, Vorn said. You showed us that strength comes in many forms, that we can learn from beings we thought were weak. This is a lesson we will not forget. Tay bowed deeply. And you gave me a gift, too. You showed me that even the fiercest warriors can choose peace, that strength and gentleness can exist together. I will carry this lesson back to Earth. As his ship lifted off, Tay looked down at the training ground. In the early morning light, he could see hundreds of small figures. The cubs were doing their morning yoga, starting their day with warrior pose. No, he corrected himself. They were starting with Hunter. Watching. It was theirs now, and somehow, that made it even more beautiful. The predator cubs had seen the human stretch. They had been curious enough to try it themselves, and in doing so, they had learned that the greatest strength is the willingness to learn, to adapt, to accept that there is always something new to discover. This was the real warrior way. Not just fighting, but growing. And this, Tay thought as his ship entered space, was how peace was truly built. Not with grand treaties or political speeches, but with small moments. Shared practices. Cubs doing yoga. Trast. Humans and Vrax learning from each other. One pose at a time. One breath at a time. One peaceful morning at a time.